Hey, come see us on tour. We'll be in Chicago, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Duluth, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta, Jacksonville, Florida, Tempe, Arizona, and Burbank, California. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets. So a lot of dirt's coming up on Tim Walz. He's super pro-war. We know that. He's super pro-Ukraine war. He's for draining our national U.S. Treasury and giving it to a money laundering operation, which is known as the Ukraine war, because that's all it is. So he's super pro-war. His wife likes sniffing the burning tires during the George Floyd protests. And, well, of course, he's not for bodily autonomy anymore because they're for forced medical experiments on people during COVID. That's what mandates are, or that's what those mandates were. He's also pro-censorship. We'll get to that. But here, I want to show you, here is now the veterans. He was claiming, some veterans are saying he is doing what they call stolen valor. So this has now surfaced. Let's watch this.
He's back again to wage a public war of words against Tim Walz.
He abandoned us. I mean, what the hell kind of leader does that? I mean, he just, as soon as the shots were fired in Iraq, he turned and ran the other way and hung his hat up and quit.
We'll get to Barron's new message for voters in a moment. But this all starts years earlier when Barron says Walz's misleading statements about his military service first led him to come forward in the fall of 2018.
So you try to get this message out, but Minnesota's largest newspaper checks it out, says it's 100% true, but yet refuses to print.
When I hung the phone up, I said, what the hell is this, North Korea?
Back in 2005, a warning order went out to the 1st Battalion, 125th Field Artillery to mobilize for a mission to Iraq. At the time, Walz served as the unit's highest non-commissioned officer, but months later, Walz would retire from the Guard, avoid the deployment, and run for Congress. Tom Barron's was...
Oh! So Mr. Pro-War, Mr. Guy who's all in solidarity with a bullshit proxy war in Ukraine, wants to drain the treasury so we can fund a money funneling organization of war in Ukraine that we have no business doing. When it came time for him to serve, he amscrayed. So he got the notice that, hey, your battalion's going to have to go over to Iraq, and he was like, hey, guess what? I'm retiring. Okay.
Next in line for the position and was asked to take his place.
I was like, well, for Pete's sake, if this guy quit, if I say I'm not going to do it, I mean, what the hell kind of leadership is that? If a company would say that we're going to deploy to Iraq or somewhere and you're going to be gone for whatever amount of time, and then the foreman just says, no, I'm not going. I mean, what does that say to the 500 people that work in that factory?
Barron's would go on to serve in Iraq on a nearly 2-year deployment as a command sergeant major. All while Walz began using that title as a congressman. Barron says he first contacted Walz with his concerns, sending these letters to Washington. They all went unanswered.
But then we fast forward to the election in 2018 in Minnesota, and you try at that time to get people's attention with this story and also with what seems to be a very misleading statement that he continued to make about his service.
It kind of just sat there. When he was a congressman, he bragged that he was a command sergeant, retired command sergeant major, and the highest ranking person ever in the House, and all this lie that he was telling. This Minnesota came out after 2018, after this was exposed, and they said, well, he can say that he served as a command sergeant major, but he can't say he's a retired one because he's not.
And that's what he was saying.
And he was saying that, and there was lots of public, lots of cards coming in the mail, for him to be elected. He said right on there he's a retired command sergeant major, just tooting his own horn, just hanging on the coattails of people that actually are command sergeant majors that went through all the process and put all the time in.
A spokesperson for the Minnesota National Guard said Walz wasn't able to retire as a command sergeant major since he failed to complete coursework and requirements related to the rank. Verified documents show the Army corrected his service record. Walz was reduced in rank to a master sergeant after retirement and his conditional promotion. Alpha News again asked Governor Walz if he's using the command sergeant major rank on his campaign website for political gain this year. A spokesperson said this has been in the news before and pointed us to a past story where Walz said, quote, Normally, this type of partisan political attack only comes from one who's never worn a uniform.
It's stolen valor is really what. I don't know if anybody else has done what he's done, but we called it the truth about Tim Walz.
In 2018, Barron's gave the story the full court press.
We, retired command sergeant majors of the Minnesota National Guard, feel it is our duty and responsibility to bring forth the truth as we know it concerning his service record. I put together information on it and I sent it out to every single radio station and newspaper and TV station I put in the state. The bottom line in all of this is gut-wrenching and sad to explain. When the nation called, he quit.
Twin Cities TV stations and the Star Tribune were silent, even after Barron says the newspaper checked it all out. The Star Tribune endorsed Walz in 2018 for governor. Between lockdowns, riots, unchecked crime, and a charred police precinct, Barron's felt he had no choice but again to come forward.
Allowing that to be burned down was just like having the Alamo get burned down. It's like, no, you defend that to the last man. You know, if he would have went to Iraq, he'd still be hiding under his desk over there. Because that's just, the cowardice that I seen portrayed with him.
So how about when he also comes out and he calls you guys 19-year-old cooks?
Take any 19-year-old cook before I'd go to war with him. I don't know how he could even utter such a statement. I mean, it's just absolutely sad.
So this election year, it's all built up again to Barron's new grain bin message.
He called Jacob Fry an abject failure. So I was like, that's what he is.
Walz is a traitor, also made a return.
And the last one I put together, he said himself too, as well, if they don't like my job, they can vote me out. So I wrote, we got to vote him out. We need to vote him out.
Okay, so he dodged his service when it came to go, and he's doing a bit of stolen valor. But at least they corrected the paperwork. So that's another. Again, this was so planned by the establishment. The establishment wanted Joe Biden to go through the primary. They rigged the primary. They took it from Iowa. They put it to South Carolina, the first one, because that would favor Joe Biden. They wouldn't list other people, and all those states. There's like 5 states that wouldn't even list other people on the ballot. They threatened to take away RFK Jr.'s anybody's delegates RFK if he campaigned in Iowa, New Hampshire. They're going to take away. So it was a rigged primary again, just like they rigged the primary against Bernie in 2016, and then they rigged it for Joe in 2020. They rigged it again, but they always had this plan to get all the delegates already elected that are pledged to Joe Biden, because those are the most establishment, pro-war, pro-corporate delegates you can find. And then they'll have an early debate, which they've never done before. And an early debate, everyone would see how demented Joe Biden is, and then they could force him out. And then they could bring in the darling of Wall Street and the military-industrial complex, the one they wanted in the first place in 2020, which is Kamala Harris. And there won't be any time to scrutinize her. She hasn't done a goddamn interview yet. She hasn't taken a question from the media, and the media is fine with that. So I got some more on this guy. So we also find out that Tim Walz, W-A-L-Z, governor of Minnesota, the new vice presidential candidate for the Democrats, again, nobody's voted for. Nobody voted for him. Nobody voted for Kamala Harris, because democracy's on the ballot, baby. Hey, come see us on tour. We'll be in Chicago, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Duluth, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta, Jacksonville, Florida, Tempe, Arizona, and Burbank, California. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets.